Okay, so this is a video game review for Just Cause for the PlayStation 2. This game was released in 2006, is also playable on the PC, Xbox and Xbox 360. Just Cause is a sandbox game which sees you playing as a CIA operative stoking up a revolution in a fictitious Caribbean nation. Given the CIA's history, this has to be one of the most ironic names for a computer game going, but the concept is still pretty interesting and thankfully doesn't play like a piece of propaganda, something that I was very wary of when considering getting this game. While it cost me next to nothing on eBay, just £2, it's stolen more hours than I care to think about. And for me, these weren't really hours of enjoyment for the most part, but ones of disappointment and at times real frustration. The game is a sandbox run and gun game. This is my bread and butter, especially after playing games like The Godfather Black Hand Edition, which is my favourite modern game to date, and which in a strange way is so similar to Just Cause, yet manages to do basically everything right, whereas Just Cause has a lot of problems with it. When reading reviews prior to getting this game, I noticed either people were disappointed by Just Cause or found it a lot of fun. I expected to find myself in the latter category, and thinking you're going to enjoy a game is often half the battle. However, with the exception of the start of the game, I found there to be very little fun to be had in Just Cause, and while I concede that the first few hours they did start off quite nicely, it's not long before you start to notice problems creeping into the game. One of my biggest gripes with the game is the story, its presentation. The cutscenes are unappealing to behold, the voice acting is horrible, the characters are the biggest bunch of losers you'll ever see, worse even than the GTA bosses, and by extension your main character Rico Rodriguez, who looks as though he's been modelled entirely on Hollywood actor Antonio Banderas, is the biggest loser going, given how he's working for these people. One of the worst features of the GTA games is how you find yourself doing jobs for these dregs of society, but so bad is Just Cause's cast that those employers will appear well-connected and astute business people by comparison. The gameplay can be split into two parts, the story missions and the side missions. The side missions are incredibly repetitive, but offer neither rewards juicy enough to incentivize doing them, or interesting enough to want to do more than a few times. The liberation of provinces sounds cool, but in reality it's a repetitive affair, with most villages looking identical, and with so many, it will add tens of hours onto the main game if you even bother to complete it 100%, so it's really not worth your time. As for the story missions, they're okay, but some really don't explain fully by what means you can achieve your objectives. I remember one mission where I had to burn a bunch of coca fields, but there was no suggestion of how to go about doing this and no hint system, so me being me, I just ended up looking online, which when I have to do while I'm playing a game, it kind of brings the enjoyment level down. I'm not going to be jumping through developers' hoops and try and work out what's going on in their minds when they're creating this game. I've had enough of punishing myself by playing point-and-click adventure games in the past. I really don't need it with my sandbox games as well. All I really want is a clear objective and saying what vehicles I can use, what tools, what weapons, things like that. Many of the vehicles control like crap, and don't even think about driving through trees, as they're littered with immovable objects and rocks which will send your vehicle spinning. There are a few vehicles on the road when you really need them, when you find yourself out in the middle of nowhere and you need a vehicle, and when one does come along, it'll often just run over you as you try to carjack it. Realistic? Maybe. Fun? No. Funnily enough though, the helicopters and sometimes planes control far better than the seriously irritating aerial vehicles of GTA, although having said that, I did play the GTA games, the modern ones, on the PC, so maybe that's part of it. And if you've guessed that I don't like the GTA 3D trilogy, 3 through till San Andreas, you'd be right, but I don't really have time to go into that grudge just now. In fact, one of the best features of this game is flying over the huge island in a helicopter, and it even looks quite nice some of the time. The graphics aren't great the rest of the time, but would be forgiven easily if the gameplay was any good. The music is fitting, but it requires a few more tracks, and the sound effects do sound good, especially the gunshots. The geography of the island is well done in places, with huge cliffs, and the rumble feedback that you get in this game seems so much greater than in other games. It's really powerful. That said, the island is ridiculously big. It's in the realms of San Andreas stupid just how large it is, so normal travel is just a chore. Even the instant travel option of extraction requires you to go into a menu, hit the option, go out of the menu, wait for the helicopter, sit through a loading screen, and then take part in a parachuting exercise to land. After the first time, you really shouldn't have to go through that whole procedure every single time, especially parachuting in to land. But given that you'll need to do this a lot in the game, it just really becomes a hassle later on. The Godfather's taxi driver system is just so much better implemented. It's almost instant. It really does, when they say instant travel, they do mean it. And the map has not been assigned to a quick button, so instead it's shoved into the load menu again. To be fair, that's what a lot of games do, but I don't really see why I can't just press a button and go to the map. And every time you visit it, which will probably be quite a lot, it loads it up with all the markers you've just checked off, all the things that you basically didn't want to see before. The zoom option when you open up the map is also piss poor, and sometimes making out what's what and where things are is very difficult, and there's seemingly no waypoint system as far as I could tell during play, so getting from place to place isn't as easy as you might think. You have to bring up the map quite a bit, which means going into the menu, and there's just these two aspects of it, the extraction, the instant travel, and the map. If they had been mapped to a simple button, things would have been so much easier and less of a hassle. And if you hadn't had to go through all that parachuting in and loading screens and stuff with the extraction, then a lot of frustration would have been saved. It's because it's something that you do quite a lot during the game, so if they had just managed to make it just that little bit less tedious, it would have been great. The game's saving grace is its checkpoint system during missions, which in many ways makes it less frustrating than it would otherwise have been. That said, while the difficulty is for the most part fine, the developers whacked it up towards the end of the game just when you want it over and done with. And to top it all off, I haven't even completed Just Cause. I got to like the final or penultimate mission where you have to basically destroy these 3 missiles with a fighter jet, and as I destroy 2 of them and I get to the final one, it turns invisible. It literally is nowhere to be seen. There are red arrows in the sky pointing to where it needs to be. I shoot at where it should be. That on the map it says I'm right next to it, and yet there's literally nothing to destroy. I don't know whether or not that's my disc, but it seems incredibly coincidental that everything else in the game seems to be working as the developers would want it. Yes, it's incredibly kind of feels very unfinished game, but to not be able to shoot down the final missile to bring an end to the game seems ridiculous. But I've retried it for hours, and literally it's like shooting myself in the foot every time, and it's very frustrating. I'm going to conclude my review now on Just Cause and say that I try not to think about how many hours I've wasted on this game, as it'll only give me heart palpitations. The first few hours are somewhat enjoyable, but you'll soon discover its many flaws. The characters are appalling to watch, the story is pants, the driving and shooting mechanics could be better, the side missions are tedious, and the island is huge and cluttered with trees, rocks and hotspots, which makes reading your map just a nightmare. To make matters worse, at least for me, personally reviewing this game, I wasn't even able to finish the game. I wasn't even able to destroy the final missile to let me have some kind of closure on just a horrible gaming experience. I thought I'd be able to extract enjoyment out of this game that other reviewers hadn't. I was completely wrong. I give Just Cause a 3.6 out of 10. And that's me.